I did this whole video on the Grooming Gang stuff, and I left out quite a lot of stuff because it's a lot. And this guy did a response to my video, and it was a terrible fucking response. He ended up, like, I called him out on like Twitter. I was like, let's have a chat. I didn't do it in a rude way. I was just like, let's have a chat on stream, because I even got more data. Like, I've got a document somewhere that is like went through his video and showed why his response didn't make any fucking sense. He ended up taking down his video because he didn't want to have a conversation with me. You know. Oh no, he hasn't. We can react. Is he put the video back up? We can react, mate. All right, we're gonna react live.
Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay.
No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
In an effort to avoid an echo
what a pussy, bro.
every now and again.
To be honest, he's a bit of a pussy. Because I messaged him and said, let's have a chat. And I was being nice. I wasn't being a dick. I was like, let's have a chat. And he said, I can say exactly. He said, I don't want to be the far right guy on your channel. I'm actually looking to move away from politics. So I'll take the video down. And he even said something to the extent of, you're one of the good guys. He said that.
I have any blind spots in my beliefs.
They all do this, bruv. The middle class, very intelligent, condescend down to everyone else type voice. And then they always have some fucking old bruh, like some old king, as their avatar. They love it. In reality, they're LARPing, bruv. If we weren't living in a politicized era, these would have been the Dungeons and Dragons kids. They wouldn't have been YouTube political commentators who hide behind being, I don't know, a king of Britain back in the 17th century or some shit. They're LARPers. They're like, you know, people who, they would have played Dungeons and Dragons.
You dork. Go back to the chess club.
Don't get me wrong, Dungeons and Dragons, sick. But you're not like a king of Britain, are you, really?
Yes, I was in the chess club.
Now, after watching some of this guy's content before, I'd only say he's really a giant of half-truths and carefully lying by omission. But I don't mean to be mean to the guy. He seems like a nice enough person. He just seems to have fallen into what I call progressive moral theology. I noticed this when he put up a video on how he escaped the quote-unquote alt-right pipeline. Now, as you can see, he's got Farage and Jordan Peterson in the frame of that video, and they're not even really alt-right at all.
Yes, the word's pipeline, isn't it? Obviously, pipeline would infer that you start at one place and you can end up somewhere. So, like, Jordan Peterson might not be alt-right, but obviously Nick Fuentes is, and there's a clear pipeline. You can start of listening to Jordan Peterson and find yourself eventually listening to Nick Fuentes. That's a pipeline. Doesn't mean everyone will end up being there. It's a pipeline. It's the same with leftist creators. You might start listening to, I don't know, social democrats, and you might eventually end up as like a tanky. It could happen. That's a pipeline, right? I was in the alt-right pipeline. I wasn't alt-right, nor these two.
If you actually watch that video, you see he started watching some Jordan Peterson and then got into the red pill, and that can get trashy and toxic, and then he got red pill rage. Then he realised that he was going wrong, so he started watching Owen Jones and Destiny and realised they were right about everything. It didn't occur to him that he'd bought into a cliched slapstick version of the right wing, by the way. It just seems he's figured it all out now, so there you go.
So this is, first claim incorrect.
Apology, anything that's pro-Britain, pro-tradition is bad. Anything...
Bruv, where do you, like, if you've watched my videos, you know that I don't think that. I love Britain and I love our tradition. I love fish and chips. I love going down to the pub. I love Britain. I love that we get obsessed about football. I don't even like football that much, but around the World Cup, I turn into like a fucking EDL member for like 5 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? I love that sort of side of Britain. I do love the things that make us British, or whatever you want to consider that. It's just insane how they have to have in their mind, if you're critical of capitalism, or if you're critical of our way of doing capitalism, then you must hate our country. You must hate our country.
That's migrant and diverse is automatically good, and he'll overlook anything bad they do. Now we begin...
Just insane. No, it's... The thing we come to, the reason we're not anti-migration is because we come to an understanding that, like, the negative outcomes of poverty is what you're pissed off about. You're pissed off that there are poor people, and poor people, unfortunately, in very unequal societies, often exhibit traits that we don't want in society. That is what the research, the academia will tell you is the reason for these negative outcomes. They are negative outcomes. Crime, people living on the street, that's negative. No one wants that. You should feel bad for them. It doesn't mean we hate tradition or whatever. It just means that we're critical of our political system. And it doesn't mean that we don't also analyse the problems. I don't want people getting stabbed. I don't want gangs. We agree on the problems, and I'm not ignoring the problems. I just don't agree on what you think causes those problems. You think it's brown people. And I guess for a while ago, I think you thought it was probably Polish, but when they became like, I don't know, the bastion of European culture, you then changed your mind and believe that now it's the browns, it's the Asians, they're the problem. It's fucking stupid. It's so fucking stupid.
Now, he begins his video on how the UK riots were all caused by misinformation by ripping apart a report by Quilliam, their Majid Nawaz's organisation, and they stated that there was a massive problem in the UK with grooming gangs.
But look, we actually do have very reliable data when it comes to the ethnicity of people convicted of CSA in general. White men make up 89% of all CSA convictions, whilst white people are 82% of the population. Asian men, who Asians make up 9% of the population, account only for 6% of all CSA convictions. In other fucking words, Asian men are underrepresented in CSA. They are less likely to do CSA.
Now, you'll see throughout a lot of these clips, this guy is getting a little bit passive-aggressive and angry, and as I say on this channel a lot, we should try and avoid that, because it's...
Oh, bro, just shut up. Stop analysing my character. Obviously, analyse the things I'm saying, bruv.
Excuse your judgment, and it means...
To be fair, actually, I've analysed this character. Nah, go ahead, mate. You can... I'm passive-aggressive, I know that.
As they often say, if someone's trying to make you upset, they're often trying to emotionally manipulate you, and you miss things like this.
That was what I was doing, yes. When I said that, it was when I got emotional, it's because I'm trying to emotionally manipulate you.
I'm passive-aggressive, I know that.
That was my objective.
The data he's giving you is from 2021 and 2021 only. Now, I don't have all the data to hand, so I'm trying to look at any flaws in an argument he's making, and immediately it seems that 2021 is a very small sample size. You could have just picked the best year. So I googled it, and I found that 2020 showed us, if we work down these bullet points on the BBC, who are hardly trustworthy when it comes to these things, that some studies suggest an overrepresentation of black and Asian offenders relative to the demographics of national populations. So it seems our friend here can get as angry as he likes with people who are concerned and want to discover the truth. However, if he's trying to debunk data, he should be very careful what he's preaching himself. Another suspicious element crops up in the small print at the bottom of the graph.
This is a good point, right? You ready?
Excludes defendants whose ethnicity was not recorded. Now, of course, this doesn't prove anything either way. It may bolster his argument, it may very much hurt it. The point I'm trying to make is this data may not be completely reliable. And you may have also noticed there's another clever quirk in the data that he doesn't add up. He's very happy to tell us that the population of Asians in England and Wales is 9% and only 6% have been charged in 2021 for child abuse offences. But as the eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted, we must remember that this issue is largely about Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs.
Yep.
So let's remember that 9% of the population includes all Asians. That includes Japanese, Chinese, Indians, plenty of those around in modern UK, as well as all different types of Muslims on top of that as well.
Okay.
If we
All right, here we go.
look at the census data from 2021, when the report is as well, we see that only 2.7% of the population of England and Wales identified as Pakistani. Of course, he's hiding that figure in the 9%, and we don't know how much of the 6% Pakistani Muslims are responsible for. He's just getting a bit angry and irate to try and blind you from that data, which he doesn't have.
All right, so that's his first point, was that data where I talked about all people, I think it's in prison for child abuse things, whatever. It uses the term Asian, and that includes Chinese and, Japanese, etc., right? So... But okay, let me give this a clear run through here on the numbers here. The claim I made is that if we look at this data, we can see that Asian category here, which is the one in purple, they work out as 9%. So 9% of our population are Asian, but they make up 6% of sexual crimes against children. So that is an underrepresentation. He made an argument in here that I'm fudging the numbers because Pakistanis are part of the Asian demographic, but also Chinese, Indian, Bangladesh, they also are part of that. So he's implying that we don't know how overrepresented Pakistanis are in child abuse because it's hidden in this category of Asian, which is too broad, right? So it's not broken down into Pakistanis. So from there, we have to take his logic, which would imply that Pakistanis are overrepresented in that number, in that 6%. In order to do that, then, what we have to do is we have to look at how much of the population of that Asian demographic and how we break it up. So we know that Chinese people make up 0.7% of the British population, Bangladesh 1.1%, Pakistanis 2.7%, Indians 3.1%, and others 1.5%. That is that 9% of population that are Asian, this number. That's how it's broken down, right? So by his logic, to imply that Pakistanis are overrepresented, mathematically, all of these other groups have to be underrepresented. So if we run a hypothetical that Pakistanis are twice as likely to commit crimes against children, and bearing in mind some of these grooming gang reports say that they're 15 times or 23 times, you know, they say these wild claims, then that means that all these other groups have to now do an incredible underrepresentation of crimes against children. That number has to come down massively in order for it still to make up the total 9%. And then so my examples here is Chinese people go from being 0.7% of the crimes against children to 0.067. Indians, 2% down to 0.2. So basically the point is you have to have this insane doublethink that you think that Pakistanis are incredibly overrepresented, but also at the same time, Indians, Chinese, Bangladesh, and other Asians are all incredibly underrepresented, like 6 to 7 times less likely. It's an insane argument he's making, because that actually bolsters my argument more so. The fact that Asian people as a category are underrepresented in crime against children, sexual abuse crimes, is a very good argument to suggest that Pakistanis are not overrepresented. It would be just mathematically, it would be impossible, or at least incredibly unlikely. Basically, the long and the short of it is to imply that Pakistanis are overrepresented by any important amount, like 2 times as represented or something like that. It would also imply that Indians, Bangladeshis, and Chinese are incredibly, like 6 to 7 times less likely to commit crimes against children. Anyway.
Highly questionable again. I did a simple Google search and found a report from 2015 into grooming.
I did a simple Google search and found a report that says that British Asians are overrepresented. He did a simple Google search result because he's saying that my data, where I said that Asians, the Home Office report reports that Asians commit these crimes proportionate to their racial, the demographic percentage of the population. He then goes on Google and finds an example of a report that says that actually Asians and blacks, they do it way more than white people. This information, if he's really an honest person who really gives a fuck, this is the information that is in the report that I am citing. The report that the data he is trying to debunk that I have presented is this data, because the report looks at this data. This is exactly from the Home Office report. He just took a random fucking report that is debunked, which was the point of my video, is that you can't trust this data, and he's just regurgitated it.
Grooming Gangs has stated that 42% of offenders were white and 14% were Asian or Asian British and 17% black. Again, he's just cherry-picking data to suit his argument, which again is a very risky thing to do when you're accusing other people of cherry-picking data to suit their argument.
So, right here, you did exactly what I claimed to do. My data is included in your data. I'm not cherry-picking data. This is the Quilliam report. I'm calculating it on their terms.
Of course, what our friend is also completely forgetting or willingly not reporting here is that a huge issue with the grooming gangs is that the government, media and local politicians were afraid to act. A lot of this stuff just never came out. A lot of people never got prosecuted. Case in point, this is just from last week in West Yorkshire. 20 men jailed for rape and child sex abuse. This is a Pakistani grooming gang. Look at their names. Amir Shaban, Malik Kadir, Mohammed Zayrab. This is a good case to cover because it shows the problems here. There was a ban on reporting this until the people were actually jailed. Further, GB News reports that an investigation was started in 2016. That's 8 years ago. And the abuse happened between 2001 and 2010. That's how long these processes can take. But then our friend states that the whole data around this is shoddy anyway and can't be trusted, which ironically is the whole point that the Tommy Robinson types have been saying all along. You can't trust the authorities with this.
Effectively,
No, it's not you can't trust the authorities. It was the reports. The authorities you're talking about are the police and the government. You can trust them to some degree on this. They made massive failures in dealing with the grooming gangs. But that's on localized levels. These are like local councils, local police departments. That's not like the Met Office or something, right? It doesn't go up that far, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, academics claim that the racist claim, so he makes a thing, right? He says that people were scared to report about grooming gangs because of fear of being racist. Fear of being racist is why they didn't report on it. And so this is a claim that bounded around in the media a lot. A lot of these academics believe that that claim was to shift the blame away from police failings. So the police didn't do their job. They allowed, they failed to intervene in a lot of these cases. And that looks terrible, right? It looks terrible. So they wanted a scapegoat themselves, which was to blame political correctness. Their hands were tied because they were scared of being labeled as racist. Now, this is a theory, right? I don't know how they've backed it up. Most of this stuff happened in the I don't know how they backed it up, but it does seem, because the way they also talk about the victims as like being working class, they say they were like rough, hanging out with bad boys. It just seems quite likely more of a class issue, that they saw these young chavvy girls and just didn't really care. They might have been like young chavvy girls on drugs, drinking, and they didn't take them seriously enough. If it was middle class white kids, my God, they would have been fucking banging on doors. So the police failing is that's where the police failed. They didn't take them seriously, likely because of their working class backgrounds. And that's what a lot of reviews into the police, like the police data on it, concluded. And the racist claim, maybe, let's just be generous, maybe there was some example of this. Maybe it was true, but it does seem like it was a scapegoat. Because bearing in mind, these police failings happened, because he said it, between 2001 to like 2017. We weren't hot on racism. We weren't like calling everyone a racist or whatever back in the 2000s, just after 9/11. The media was running things daily on Muslims and terrorists and stuff like that. The idea that there was some major political correctness around race back then and demonizing Muslims is just to be completely detached from really what 2000s Britain was like, where there was lots of racism against Muslims. It just was. It was in the media every day. You open up the Sun, you would read about something negative about Muslims. All right, it just ignores reality.
That's not exactly what was happening.
It's not? What is it? Oh, why does it lie?
It ignores reality. The whole racism thing was more 2017 onwards. And that's when all this stuff came out, was 2017. So they were just using what was a hot button topic of the time, which is racism, to be a shield to hide behind their failings as police officers. Yeah, there's also, when we talk about two-tier justice, it's insane because there's tons of evidence of disproportionate policing of minorities in the UK. It seems very dubious that these police officers in 2001 just were really like woke. It just seems ridiculous because bearing in mind, in that same time, minorities were being stopped and searched like 4 or 5 times more than white people. All right, 724, what does he say here?
Just police choosing as and when they want to report on race, where most of the time they didn't report on it, and most of the time they did report on it, it was just them guessing. The geezer looks Asian, he'll stick down Pakistani because, Dazza doesn't have many brown friends.
What? That is completely outrageous. You've got no evidence to make that claim at all, not even a shred. You're just hoping that the audiences will share the same biases as you.
So he makes that claim, again, without looking into the fucking thing I'm talking about. So he says I've got no evidence, right? In the data that I have cited, which is what I'm literally talking about in the video he's commenting on, it says police collected data on ethnicity using broad categories and requires the police to assign an ethnicity rather than it being self-reported by the offenders. But they guessed it, right? Because most, as it says here, most of the ethnicity data that was collected was not self-reported. It was just police observing the offender and claiming they were Pakistani. In an era where we often called brown people PAKI. Data is therefore not always accurate. This is cited from, Berylowitz. Observed cases of offenders being initially classed as Asian, but actually come in from other backgrounds such as white, British, or Afghan. So there was instances, this is why the data is unreliable in the grooming gangs, all of the reports, is because there's stuff like that, where originally they wrote down Pakistani, and then it turned out they're actually white, British. All right? The reporting of the data was so fucking weak that you cannot use these reports. Ethnicity is recorded by the police officer. The 2020 Home Office report found this could result in offenders being classed as Asian whilst being from other backgrounds. That's also in this, where he actually read this, where he didn't, because he obviously just clicked the one bit that he clicked this bit, which Google showed. But in that same article that he's going into, it fucking says exactly what I just said, that they were classing them as Asian. The 2020, it's 2 fucking sentences below the bit you quoted. It says the 2020 Home Office report found that this could result in offenders being classed as Asian while being from other backgrounds. It's the sentence after the bit that he cited in his video, and then he says, I'm making this up from my biases. Bruv, this is such a shoddy video.
We know that police are scared to report on this stuff because they'll have their careers ruined. They'll be called racist and evil and so on, and that's not without precedent. Remember the Manchester bombing attack? A security guard there saw the terrorist and thought he was acting dodgy, but didn't want to be accused of racism, so didn't do anything.
You have just accused me of cherry picking random data. That is the most random fucking thing you could use to try and bolster your argument. You said, we have evidence that the police are scared of being called racist and therefore they don't go and like punish minority groups. And then you decided to cite a security guard who said he didn't go after this Asian guy who looked suspicious at the Manchester arena bombing because he feared he might seem racist. Again, probably a guy who failed to do his job because, he didn't find the guy with a bomb. He's at an inquiry of why Manchester arena got bombed. What has that got to do with police mistreat a minority? What is that got to do? You've just picked a random thing of this guy once said he was scared of being called a racist. He's a security guy. He's not a fucking police officer. Irrelevant.
But things take a bit of a darker turn when this guy starts exploring a series of events which inspired the riots of the so-called far right.
However, this speculation...
So-called far right, bruv. What else are there? Are they centrists?
This goes right back to the video I talked about that he did at the beginning, how he escaped the alt-right pipeline. He has a very Disneyfied view of the right wing and their concerns. To him, none of them are really real. The people that just believe in them are absolutely mad.
No, your concerns about, the problems of, say, poverty are real. Like, being concerned about homeless people, being concerned about crime. They're real, and I agree with that. And if the right winger wants to talk about that, I would agree with them. Your conclusions are wrong. Why you think these things happen, because you consider them to be individual choices by individuals or cultural, ethnic, what do they call it, determinism, where you think someone's culture and ethnicity determines the outcomes of their lives and if they're criminal. That's where we disagree, right? I'm not saying, what a dumb argument. It's such a straw man argument. I can disagree with Muslims whilst also standing up for them not being treated like fucking shit in this country. Two of those things can be true at the same time. But right now, I don't see the pressing argument in society, the pressing evil and the pressing problem being Islam. I don't. Personally, I don't. I see it as fucking lots of other things. I see it as, the ultra-powerful, Elon Musk trying to infiltrate our politics. I see those as the big problems in society. I don't see, like, Berry Park and 6% of our population being Muslims being the big problem in society.
Now, I'm sure he's right in that there are a few extreme figures who just want to fight and so on, but when he does the quote marks and says,
to protect the children.
Now, I know this guy's a young lad, and I'm sure he thinks he's saving the world with all this leftist rhetoric, but when you undermine the murders of children and the mass rape, it doesn't tend to play well. People don't warm to your argument. They think this person has quite a callous side.
The mass rape. It's just like, bruv, they never talk about, say, like, women being raped by white people. They never talk about that. Is a massive problem in society. I have never, ever heard any of these people ever call for more funding from the government to refuge centres for women or, any victim of abuse. I have never heard that. So, bruv, don't come talking about fucking protecting the children, giving a shit about women. You don't. You don't, because you would campaign for the things that would fix that. But your campaign is to get immigrants out of this country. That should be your main objective. If this is what you claim to care about, is the children or the women or whatever, then fucking fix it. Do something now. Do something about the stuff that's happening on 89% of the cases, which is white men. Do something about that. But I've never heard any of you lot calling for like extra funding or, to actually do something. You don't want to do anything. You want to kick out migrants, and this is your vessel, your propaganda tool in order to push this topic, because, you got fudged up data that you can use to radicalize these people, these working class people who struggle, who are having tough times, who are looking at their lives going, fuck, my life sucks. And then they're looking at the government, and the government are making their lives even worse through bad economic policies. And then you come along and tell them it's all the immigrants' fault. And they're busy working their fucking lives. And they haven't gone to university to get educated and to learn how to discern data. I didn't. That's why I fell for a lot of this shit. And so these people become prime targets for radicalization. So they're not the problem. You can blame the education system. You can blame the government for failing them economically. But you lot take these real feelings they have, fear, anxiety, and stress in their lives, and you take them and manipulate them and point them towards Muslims rather than the fucking ultra powerful, the ultra wealthy that are decimating this country.
To him, and he just wants to win an argument rather than explore the truth and explore what's really hurting people at the moment. In fact, with a callousness like that, you could say he's a man after Keir Starmer's heart and he's looking for a job in the Labour Party.
That is, to be honest, that's the end goal. Just love me some Starms. It's such a shame, man, about Labour, because it's like, I want to support them. Like, I want to support the left-wing party, but they're not left-wing. They're right-wingers. They believe in the same economic policies as the Tories. And so all their attempts to do anything, where their rhetoric might be right on some things, it's not on a lot of things. I don't know. I'm losing hope a little bit. I want to reform the Labour Party. I would like to see the Labour Party become what it once was. And so I begrudgingly will support them. But don't get me wrong, I do not love Starmer. I don't love what he's doing.
These English protesters went and stabbed a load of Muslim children. Would he really just be like, yeah, they just stabbed a few children, but the important thing is the Muslims did an anti-English protest afterwards.
There you go. So he referred to anti-English protests, right? Then, okay, so if white people did kill a Muslim child, and then Islamic extremists did riots around the country saying that we need to kill all white people, obviously, I would obviously fucking condemn that. Obviously. His claim was that if the reverse happened, I would not be angry at the Muslims for rioting about some white guy killing one of them.
Young Asian men started fighting, police officers stamped on his head.
Completely lying through his teeth about what happened. We now know, after data came out afterwards.
No, I didn't.
Manchester airport incident where young Asian men started fighting, police officers stamped on his head.
So this is for editing's sake, that's why I abbreviated a lot of this stuff. In this, where this guy kicked him in the head, he's claiming that I'm saying that happened and that the Asian men weren't at fault for fighting them. I didn't say that. I said Asian men started fighting, policeman kicked him in the head. Now, there is an edit in there, probably in the original take, I spoke longer about it, but I made it clear that Asian men were fighting because they initiated the fight, and then the police officer stamped on his head. That's what I said. So I didn't say what he's trying to claim I'm saying, which is that the police officers were the bad ones and the Asian man wasn't. Police officer was bad, he shouldn't have kicked him in the head. Asian men shouldn't have started that fight.
Oh, and by the way, those Muslim men who were playing the victim originally still haven't been charged for attacking a policewoman, despite Reform threatening legal action.
So because they hadn't been charged at the point he recorded this, he was alluding that, there is some sort of they're never going to get charged effectively. They got charged. This was a complicated case whereby the Asian men were at fault for starting the fight. However, the police officer was also at fault for stamping on his head. So this was a complicated case. And actually, no charge got brought against the police officer. So in their whole narrative, which would be, effectively either get the case thrown out or penalise the police officer for doing terrible things, the police officer didn't get charged for stamping on the Asian men's head. Where's the two-tier justice there? The Asian men were the people that were convicted. I personally, and I don't understand law, so I'll just trust that they did their job right and whatever. I would probably say that the police officer should also face some kind of consequence for acting out of a line. He shouldn't have stamped his head. What I'm trying to say. Okay, no. But I also would have said the Asian men should have been charged. By what it looked like in the video, they started the fight. But this is, because justice takes time to serve. This is the thing that the other thing that right wingers love, they always use this to their advantage, is justice takes time. Right? Complicated court cases, especially ones in the public eye, take time, and they have to, go through everything and make sure they're doing it correctly so that people get fair justice. Everyone. That's our British value, is that everyone should have fair, treated fairly and get a fair court case or whatever the fuck they call it. Fair justice or whatever. And so it takes time. The far right love that, because when it takes time, they go, they're never gonna charge him because he's white and blah blah blah, and the Asians are allowed to be free. They get charged. It's just it takes time, and they capitalize on the fact that things take time.
Now, given we know our friend is such a stickler for the truth, it's odd how he didn't include that in his video, which
He
was
does the Paul Joseph Watson thing. Given our friend is a stickler for the truth. That's like exactly how Paul Joseph Watson talks.
now in a video where he's supposed to call out misinformation, he's completely devolved into misrepresentation himself. It's inexcusable.
Final straw would break the camel's back.
And what could he describe as a straw?
There's been a major incident in Southport.
Oh, nothing that major to him then, just more stabbings of children. After all, it's all about the response to these things, not, children being murdered.
Is 17, British, born in Wales and of Rwandan heritage.
Incredibly, the far-right grifterverse just doubled down and magically managed to pin the blame back onto Muslims.
No, your screen hasn't cut out, the video is still going. There's just not much I can say. But we're all aware, as is this young man, of the recent charges that Axel Runa Kabada has faced. Specifically with regards to having ricin and apparently a training manual from Al-Qaeda. I
Incorrect.
have to say these are just charges at the moment, so nothing is proved. I can't say anything. This I can say what he likes.
He's already just misrepresented the charge that was brought against him, but we'll go into it.
And he should know what's been reported. If he cares about the truth so much, if he's so committed to data, he should have revised that part of his video, but he doesn't, because he willingly is lying to his viewers. Now, we did have loads more examples to show you, one featuring Lucy Connolly.
Okay, so look into this claim. Firstly, there was no and still no evidence to say that the attack was an Islamic terror attack. They haven't found that motive, right? If you're alleging that, so they haven't been able to literally say he was motivated by jihadist propaganda. They haven't been able to find a motive. He hasn't wrote somewhere, or at least as far as we know, because the evidence hasn't come out yet into the public area. But there isn't like a manifesto or something like that, or there isn't some clear link to radical jihad. If you are alleging a conspiracy, that they're hiding all this information from the public, they want to make it so that he wasn't a Muslim terrorist or something. Why? Just from his perspective, like his logic, right? So the government are lying that this guy's actually a secret Muslim jihadi terrorist. They're lying to you about that. Why would they then charge him on a terror-related charge and still not call it terrorism? How would that make sense? From your conspiracy, they would just say something like, they just wouldn't charge him on terrorism. Why would they charge him on terrorism and also try and pretend that he wasn't a terrorist? Why would they do it? Just logically, think that through. Why would they do that? Doesn't make any sense. The reason they haven't called it a terrorist attack, right? And this is, you have to know this, right? And it could have been, and I always say this, it could have been a terrorist attack. But the reason they hadn't charged him, because the law needs to find motive, which they haven't found, or they haven't made available the evidence that says these Muslim terrorists. Examples would be, are there chat logs of him talking with terrorist cells? Is there like documented chats between him and like some person in ISIS or something? Is there evidence of him watching endless jihadist propaganda? They have access now to all his hard drives, and you can't get rid of any of this stuff. So if you've been watching loads of terrorist footage, you will have that in your history, and they will be able to establish a motive based on that. I don't even fucking know law, bruv, and this is just so obvious. They will look through his thing and see if they can establish a motive. That's what they do. And they're looking for that. They're looking to find that motive. We don't know, and you don't know, as this evidence isn't available. If they haven't already established the motive that it was terrorism, it's likely it probably wasn't, because if the evidence hasn't come out, then probably it wasn't. But we can't know it yet until the courts tell us. So he talks about the fact that the stabber had ricin, which is a poison, and that he had a jihadist terrorist training manual, right? This is a big claim they made. So he possessed a CIA manual on the Al-Qaeda, and the manual about sort of terrorist actions, etc., or like terrorist training. So this is a CIA manual, a report the CIA would have done about an Al-Qaeda manual, which has a bit about ricin. Right, so let's say that he is a terrorist. Why would he get his terrorist training manuals from the CIA and not just directly from ISIS? Right? So here's an example. So if you're a crazy person and you want to kill people, you will just find whatever information you can get. And it could have been, he could have got ISIS stuff, but he went and got a CIA thing because that's what he found, right? Here's an example of a guy called Nicholas Brooke, right? Back in 2021, Nicholas Brooke, he was convicted of terrorism offences after being found with advice on how to maim and kill. Nicholas Brooke, who's a white guy, by the way, contained items demonstrating an interest in extreme right-wing and white supremacy ideology. This is the guy, this is his room. A man who stockpiled neo-Nazi memorabilia has been found guilty of terrorism offences after downloading a bomb-making manual. So he wanted to find out how to make a bomb because he was a white nationalist and he had a plan to make an attack. In his room, it had stuff like Mein Kampf. It had books about the KKK, Combat 18, which are like a white supremacist group. But also, you'll see that this white nationalist called Nicholas, who was deranged and wanted to kill people, his hard drive included a folder labelled Army Military Manuals, which contained 2 manuals for an AK-47 assault rifle and others from the US Army pistol training and explosives, along with a copy of a document known as the Al-Qaeda Manual. So a white nationalist also had an Al-Qaeda manual. Do you see what I'm saying here? If they're trying to claim that simply by having an Al-Qaeda manual, which wasn't an Al-Qaeda manual, it was a CIA manual that included Al-Qaeda information, by simply claiming that is enough to establish a motive that he is a jihadist, then you would also, that logic would extend to Nicholas Brooke, a white supremacist who had a Al-Qaeda training manual. They find information that will teach them how to kill people. And if it happens to be his jihadist manual or the CIA's manual or like, I don't know, a right-wing manual or whatever, they will use it because the information is good for them to do what they want to do. So yeah, if a mentally sick person wants to kill people, he'll look up ways of doing it. And if anything is more telling that the Southport stabber didn't have direct Al-Qaeda manuals, but rather a USA Air Force material. And this is the material he had, right? Military Studies in Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. So that's the manual, comes from the CIA. This is the manual. It's not directly from Al-Qaeda. So if he was a terrorist, would he not have just got direct information from ISIS? Like, it's possible he was a Muslim, which was totally possible at the time when the attacks happened. That was totally possible. But why were people spreading the claims about him being a refugee on a boat, an Islamic terrorist on an MI5 watch list? And how does, even if he was a Muslim, how does that justify burning down refugee centers? It just doesn't. All right, so let's do this last bit. We're really nearly. I know it's meant to be a Q&A, but if he reopened the video, which he said, he literally DM'd me. Maybe I can drag up the DMs. But he literally said to me he'll get rid of it. So, and he's put it back up. So anything's fair game at that point. I was being a person of moral fibre.
Lady, I'm a God-fearing, peace-loving man of the people.
Whatever, asshole.
At the time, I was like, bruv, look, if he wants to retreat, he can retreat and I won't punish him, I won't bully him. But he's going to do this. He's going to reopen this video that he said he would take down because I'm one of the good ones. Yeah, nah. I'll roast this video.
He says she was right to be jailed for a tweet. However, he ignores Nick Lowell's tweet, which also lied, stating that acid was being thrown at Muslim women. Apparently.
Okay, Nick Lowell's tweet was misinformation, but it was not a call to violence, right? So he's comparing this woman, Lucy Connolly.
One featuring Lucy Connolly. He says she was right to be jailed for a tweet. However, he ignores Nick Lowell's tweet, which also lied, stating that acid was being thrown at Muslim women.
So, just again, these people have bruv, they try and sound like they're smart. Bruv, he sounds smarter than me, innit? Like, if you listen to him, you're like, oh yeah, he's middle class, he sounds smart. But he's a fucking idiot. Like, he's compared two completely different tweets, right? So what this guy says, Nick Lowell's, he says, reports are coming in of acid being thrown out of a car window at Muslim women in Middlesbrough. Absolutely horrendous. Okay, misinformation. All right. What did Lucy Connolly say? She said basically burn the hotels down. It was a direct and active call to violence. She said burn hotels down housing the right refugees or something to that extent. I can get it up if it's worth me doing. Set fire to all the fucking hotels full of the bastards for all I care. Do you consider that active call to violence, which is for people whilst they're rioting, bear in mind this is context matters, is enduring a riot, that's a call to violence. Do you consider that the same offence?
He says she was right to be jailed for a tweet. However, he ignores
as spreading misinformation, saying that someone's attacked someone. He doesn't ever call to. They're not the same offence. Don't pretend they're the same offence. You're being incredibly intellectually dishonest if you try and claim that's the same offence. They're two very different offences, and you know that. You're just being a fucking clown, bruv. I had so much more stuff on grooming gangs, etc. But that is, by and large, that's kind of my critique on that stupid video that he's put back up. But I just wanted to go through that because, bruv, these people can just say this shit and they get away with it. And that's how they do it. They do it through lying about data and just misrepresenting everything you say.